Sara's story, The Alpha's Last Winter, by Kate. Prologue. The blizzard howled like a wounded animal, rattling the pine trees with bone-deep fury. Snow coated every branch, every boulder, every path, erasing the world beneath a sheet of white silence. Sara Kendrick pulled her parka tighter, her gloved hand gripping the strap of her rifle as she trudged through the drifts. She had patrolled these woods for over a decade, but this storm had turned them into something else, something ancient, something watching. The radio on her hip crackled, then died. She was alone, or so she thought. It wasn't the sound that caught her attention, but the absence of sound. The trees stilled. The wind paused mid-growl, and then, from under a heap of snow not 20 yards from the trail, came a weak groan. She hesitated, heart pounding. There shouldn't be anyone out here in this weather. Sara dropped to her knees, shoving snow aside until she uncovered a face, half frozen, bruised, and bleeding. His eyes fluttered open, gold-flecked and inhumanly sharp for someone so near death. "Help," he rasped. She didn't know it then, but saving that man would damn her quiet life, awaken a war buried beneath centuries of ice, and tear open the wounds she thought had long healed. His name was Jake, and he wasn't human. Chapter 1. The Cabin and the Curse. Jake didn't speak for the first 2 days. Fevered and shaking, he barely ate. Sara did what she could, warming broth on the stove, tending his wounds, keeping the fire roaring day and night. He'd been mauled, deep claw marks along his ribs, a gash down his thigh that looked almost surgical in its brutality. What animal does that to a man and leaves him alive? By the third night, he opened his eyes and asked, "Where am I?" Sara studied him from the chair by the fire. Her dog, Scout, growled softly from the corner. He never liked strangers, but this was more than suspicion. It was fear. "Montana, glacier territory. You're lucky I found you," he frowned. "You shouldn't have." Sara raised an eyebrow. "Would you rather I left you to freeze to death?" His golden eyes lingered on hers for a moment too long. That might have been kinder. Chapter 2. Ghosts in the Trees. As Jake's body healed, Sara noticed the changes. He recovered fast, unnaturally fast. The gashes that should have taken weeks to scab over were nearly gone in days. His strength returned in surges, like something inside him was fighting to rise. And the howling outside. It wasn't normal, it echoed too long, too mournful. One night, she found Jake standing on the porch shirtless, eyes closed, snow falling around him. "You're not from around here," she said. "No." "You gonna tell me what you are?" He looked back at her, and the truth flickered across his face like firelight. "Not yet." Behind them, the wind carried the sound of howling. But this time, it didn't come from any wolf. It came from the mountain. Something had awakened. Chapter 3. The Pact That Fell. Miles away, in a cave buried beneath the foothills, the Silvertooth Pack held council. The Alpha was dead, slaughtered, and the heir, Jake, was missing. Talia, Jake's younger sister, stood at the head of the circle, fists clenched. She'd fought to keep what was left of the pack together. But without Jake, the elders questioned her right to lead. Without Jake, the assassins, the hollowed, would come again. "I say we name a new Alpha," growled Brannick, one of the oldest and most power-hungry wolves. "Jake's as good as dead." "You wish he were dead," snapped Talia. "But he's not. I can feel him. He's alive." "She's right," said a soft voice. The circle turned as the blind seer, Elaine, entered. Her eyes were clouded, but her presence was sharp as a blade. "There is blood in the snow." An ancient promise broken. The exile lives, but so does the curse. Whispers rippled through the pack. Talia looked to the mountain. Then I'll bring him home, or die trying. Chapter 4. Shadows in the Firelight. Jake told Sara everything on the 6th night. The truth, at least in pieces. I'm not normal. I'm a shifter. A werewolf, if you want to call it that. I used to lead a pack, but I broke our laws. I killed someone I wasn't supposed to. Sara sat across from him, the fire crackling between them. Her hand trembled slightly around her mug of tea. Who? She asked. My uncle. He betrayed us to the Hallowed, an ancient order that hunts supernatural bloodlines. He sold our location, got my father killed. I challenged him. I won, but by doing it, I triggered the prophecy. Sara blinked. Prophecy. Jake leaned forward. There's an old legend that when the blood of kin is spilled by the rightful heir, the ancient ones beneath the ice will stir. I thought it was just a story, but now. Sara remembered the howl from the mountain, the dream she'd had last night. Ice cracking, teeth in the dark, a woman's voice whispering her name in a language she didn't know. She stared into the fire. I think they're awake. Chapter 5. Talia's Hunt. Talia tracked her brother's scent through the forest, aided by Elaine's visions and her own relentless drive. Each mile deeper into the wilderness, the land grew colder. Meaner. She found a clearing dusted with blood and broken branches. Then she found the cabin. The woman answered the door with a shotgun in her hand. You must be Sara, Talia said. I'm Jake's sister. Sara didn't lower the gun. You're not exactly what I was expecting. Neither are you, Talia smirked. But we need to talk. There's a war coming. And your cabin is sitting on the mouth of something very, very old. Behind her, the trees groaned as if something ancient exhaled beneath them. Chapter 6. The Hollowed Return. Deep within the abandoned mines at Black Hollow Ridge, the assassins prepared. The Hollowed wore no faces, just bone masks carved from ancient beasts. Their leader, the Wraith Caller, dipped her blade in the blood of the last alpha she killed. Jake lives, she whispered. One of her followers hissed. Shall we hunt him? Not yet. The prophecy must complete itself. Let him wake the curse. Let the human bleed. Then we strike. She lifted her hand, and the shadows moved. Chapter 7. The Bite and the Bond. Jake and Sara stood by the frozen lake. Moonlight silvered the trees, and for a moment, everything was still. You could come with us, Jake said softly. When we leave, you don't have to stay here. This is my home, she replied, even if it's falling apart. He looked down. I'm not safe to be around. The things I've done, the things I might still do. You're not the only one haunted by the past, Jake. She lifted her sleeve. A long scar crossed her forearm. I lost my fiancé in these woods. Mountain rescue. He slipped. I held the rope. I let go. Jake touched the scar. You didn't let go. You survived. That matters. They kissed beneath the frozen moonlight. It wasn't magic. It wasn't fate. It was choice. And that made it real. Chapter 8. Secrets of the Icebound. The cabin creaked under the weight of a blizzard that hadn't let up for 2 days. Inside, the tension thickened with every hour. Talia stood at the window, arms crossed, as Jake paced by the fire. Sara sharpened her knife, not because she needed it, but because the motion kept her grounded. Elaine said this place was cursed, Talia said, her voice tight. You felt it, haven't you? The dreams, the whispers. Jake stopped pacing. They started when I got here. No, Sara murmured. They started when I pulled you from the ice. Talia's eyes snapped to her. Then she chose you. Who did? The first alpha, Talia whispered. Our ancestor. She was betrayed by her mate and imprisoned beneath the ice for eternity. Legend says she speaks only to those with the blood of loss. Sara scoffed. That's just a story. Talia's expression hardened. So was Jake's prophecy, until the snow started bleeding. Chapter 9. Fracture's tempers flared the next morning. Brannick and 2 other pack members arrived without warning, teeth bared and eyes burning. They had no patience for diplomacy. This human is clouding your judgment, Jake, Brannick growled. The pack needs strength, not sentiment. Jake stepped between them. She saved my life. And doomed the rest of us, Brannick snapped. You think the Hollowed will spare us now? Sara raised her chin. I don't expect to be spared, but I won't be bullied either. Elaine's voice cut through the cabin like a blade. Enough. She appeared in the doorway, her cane sinking into the snow. The ice is cracking. The curse will not wait for your petty pride. Jake looked to her, desperate. How do we stop it? You don't. Elaine's blind eyes turned to Sara. She does. Chapter 10. The Pact. The wind died suddenly that night. No snow, no noise. Just a stillness so deep it hummed. Sara walked into the woods alone. She didn't know why, only that the voice from her dreams had called again. At the frozen lake, she knelt. The ice beneath her glowed faintly blue. Why me? She whispered. A low voice, female and thunderous, rumbled beneath the surface. Because you are what he is not. You are unbound. You have no oath, no bloodline. You are free, and only the free may choose to end what the bloodbound began. A vision hit her. The first alpha, chained beneath the ice, betrayed by her own mate for power. Her wrath had seeped into the land, cursing all alphas who rose unworthy. Jake hadn't triggered the curse by killing his uncle. The curse had already chosen him. And now, it demanded payment. Chapter 11. Betrayals. Back at the cabin, Talia confronted Jake. You knew, she said. You knew you were the curse. Jake clenched his jaw. I thought I could outrun it. And instead, you dragged her into it? I didn't ask her to save me. But she did, and now she'll pay the price. Outside, Brannick listened in the shadows. And when dawn came, he was gone. Chapter 12. War in the Pines. Brannick didn't go to warn the others. He went to summon them. In a clearing soaked with moonlight, he met the Wraithcaller. The Alpha is cursed, he said. The pack is weak. I offer you a trade. The Wraithcaller leaned in, her mask bone white. Speak. Let me lead. Spare me. The others, you can have. A slow, chilling smile spread beneath the mask. Done. At the cabin, Elaine gasped awake from her sleep. He's betrayed us. Jake grabbed his coat. Then we fight. Sara grabbed her rifle. Together. Chapter 13. The Final Shift. The battle came before dawn. The Hollowed swept in like ghosts, blades flashing, howls shattering the quiet. Jake shifted first, his body rippling into a massive black wolf, eyes glowing gold. Talia followed, flanking him in silver fur. Sara moved like a shadow, picking off attackers from the tree line, her aim deadly, but the Wraithcaller didn't fight. She stood at the lake, chanting. Elaine screamed. She's wakened the first alpha. Jake and Sara raced to her side by side. You have to kill me, Jake gasped. It's the only way to end it. The curse is in me. No, Sara said. Not again. She stepped onto the ice, raised her arms, and whispered the name from her dream. The lake cracked. The wraith caller shrieked. From beneath the ice, the first alpha rose, not in body, but in memory. She saw Sara, and forgave. The curse shattered. The hollowed screamed and scattered like ash in the wind. Brannick fell to his knees. "What have I done?" Jake fell beside Sara, human again, tears streaming down his cheeks. "You chose," he said, "and you saved us." Chapter 14. After the storm, the cabin still stood, though scarred. The lake slowly froze over again, this time without whispers. Talia took over the pack, fair, firm, and finally ready. Jake stayed, with Sara. They rebuilt the cabin together. The dog stopped growling at him, and sometimes, at night, Jake would stand on the porch and listen. Not for enemies, but for peace. "I still don't believe in fate," Sara told him. "Neither do I," he said, "but I believe in you." They kissed beneath the moon, not as saviors, not as soulmates foretold, but as survivors who found each other in the most important time. Chapter 15. Scar Tissue. The days after the battle blurred. Sara slept for nearly 20 hours straight, her body crashing under the weight of adrenaline and spiritual energy she didn't know she'd channeled. When she finally woke, the world felt different. The cold wasn't just outside anymore, it had burrowed into her bones. Jake sat beside the bed, shirtless, bruised, exhausted. He didn't speak when her eyes opened. He only reached for her hand. "I thought you were gone," he said hoarsely. "I thought I was too." The moment should have been comforting, but it wasn't. The silence that followed was too heavy. Too many things left unsaid. "I saw her," Sara whispered. "The first alpha. She looked like someone who'd been waiting for centuries to be forgiven." Jake bowed his head. "We never gave her peace. We turned her story into a weapon, a warning." "She wasn't a warning," Sara said. "She was a woman who had been used and betrayed by people who should have protected her." And in that moment, Sara knew she wasn't done. Not with Jake. Not with the pack. Not with whatever lay buried deeper than ice and legend. Chapter 16. Bloodlines and Blame. Talia assembled the surviving pack members in the clearing by the lake. Snow fell softly. Brannick stood off to the side, eyes downcast, stripped of rank and title. "You don't owe me forgiveness," he said to her, "or mercy." Talia tilted her head. "I don't give either of those easily," Brannick swallowed. "But I want to make it right. I want to help rebuild." The others murmured, unsure. Sara stepped forward, cloak dusted in frost. "Then prove it, with action, not words." Brannick nodded once. "I will." But forgiveness wasn't simple. Among the younger wolves, there was division. Some believed in the old order, the strong rule, the weak follow. Others wanted a new way, a democracy, a council. Talia faced resistance at every turn. Jake watched it unfold with a familiar ache. This was what he had tried to protect them from. But in doing so, he had become the thing he feared, a symbol of destruction. "I don't belong in the pack," he told Sara one night. "I bring too much blood with me." Sara didn't answer with words. She placed his hand on her chest. "Then start again, right here." Chapter 17. Frostbloom spring didn't arrive gently. The snow didn't melt. It cracked and collapsed in massive chunks. The river swelled. Trees groaned and released months of ice. The lake, once the prison of the first alpha, now shimmered with a strange bloom of color beneath its surface. Talia called it the frostbloom, a sign of rebirth. Elaine believed it was a remnant of the curse, but not malignant anymore. Residual magic, dormant and watching. Sara felt it too. in her dreams, in the air. One night, while cleaning her cabin, she found an old photograph tucked into a book. It showed a woman in ranger gear from nearly a century ago, hair in a long braid, rifle on her shoulder, on the back a single name, Edith Kendrick, her grandmother. Sara had never known her. Her father never spoke of her. But the resemblance was undeniable. She brought the photo to Elaine. The seer held it in her withered hands. She was one of the first to guard the frost line, before there was a curse. Sara's voice cracked. You knew her? Elaine's blind eyes stared into the past. She helped the first Alpha pass on. She calmed the storm once before, just like you did. Bloodlines ran deeper than she thought. Chapter 18. Longing and Lore. Jake and Sara didn't fall into each other easily. Every kiss carried weight. Every moment of touch was laced with hesitation. She wasn't a shifter. He wasn't a man unscarred. But when they finally gave in, it wasn't under moonlight or magic. It was in the soft hours before dawn, in the warmth of a rebuilt bed, with the fire casting gold on their skin. I want to stay, Jake whispered. If you'll let me. Sara nodded, voice hushed. Then stay. But outside the cabin, the world grew louder again. Pacts from the east sent envoys. News of the broken curse spread. Some saw opportunity, others saw threat. And the hollowed were not gone, just dormant. Chapter 19. The Shifter Accords. 3 months later, Talias called a gathering at the heart of the woods, an ancient clearing surrounded by trees older than recorded history. Pacts arrived from across the continent, Black Ridge, Fenfall, Deep Ash. Some came to support, others came to challenge. Jake was forbidden to speak per the old laws. His past crimes still hung over him like shadow, so Sara stood in his place. I'm not one of you, she said to the crowd. I have no lineage, no wolf inside me, but I've bled for your kind. I've fought beside you, and I've listened when no one else would. You speak of laws, but what good are they if they kill every soul who dares question them? The first Alpha wasn't a monster. She was a woman used by a man who feared her strength. Jake killed his uncle because the council wouldn't, and that act saved you. So you can exile him again, or you can choose to evolve. A long silence followed. Then a voice from the Fenfall pack. Let the old laws die with the old wolves. And just like that, the world shifted. Jake's exile was lifted. A new council formed. Sara was named Honorary Alpha, a title never before given to a human. Chapter 20. Meltwater. The last of the snow melted. Flowers bloomed from once frozen soil. The frost bloom at the lake glowed only faintly now. Talias took her place at the head of the new council. Elaine retired to the edge of the woods, her role finally complete. Brannock became guardian of the southern border, a silent soldier making penance with every day. Jake built a new wing onto Sara's cabin. Not a den, a home. One night, as they walked by the lake, Sara looked up at the stars. I still don't believe in fate, she said. Jake squeezed her hand. Then we'll make our own. And from the depths of the forest, a new howl echoed. Not one of warning, but of promise. The curse was gone. The past laid to rest. But the future had only just begun. Chapter 21. Firelight Confessions. The nights grew warmer, but the fire in the cabin still burned. Not for heat, but for comfort, for ritual, for remembrance. Sara sat curled up in the corner of the sofa, an old ranger journal on her lap. Jake sat on the floor beside her, back against the couch, head tilted to rest near her knee. They'd spent the last few weeks sorting through crates of her grandmother Edith's old field gear, maps, weaponry, even pages in a strange cipher. It's like she was preparing for war, Jake murmured, flipping through another brittle notebook. She probably was, Sara replied. There's something in here, notes about a boundary, about keeping something in the woods, not out. Jake's jaw tensed. You think this has to do with the curse? I think the first alpha wasn't the only thing buried under the snow. They stared at each other as the realization sank in. What if the curse had been a warning, not just a punishment? What if something else, older, darker, had been kept trapped by the blood rituals, the howls, the ice? I think we only ended one winter, Sara whispered, and another is coming. Chapter 22, The Forgotten Sigil. The next day, Talia called them to the council's stone circle. The runes on the outer ring, worn by time, were glowing again. None of us activated them, she said. It happened on its own. Elaine, who'd come out of her retreat only for this, traced her fingers across a frost-covered stone. These are not wolf marks. These are older. She looked at Sara. The Kendrick line goes further back than any of us guessed. Your grandmother wasn't just a ranger. She was a warden. Sara frowned. What does that mean? Elaine's voice dropped. A human tasked with protecting the shifter realm. It happens only once every generation, when a gate is weakening. Jake stepped forward. Gate? To the old world, Elaine said. To what came before wolves, before men, before snow. A wind rushed through the circle and extinguished every torch. Chapter 23, The Frostfather Stirs. Brannick had always been stubborn, but even he couldn't ignore the shifting woods. Animals fled areas they once called home. The snow in certain valleys never melted. Trees iced over from the inside. He was patrolling the northern ridge when he saw the first sign. A single claw mark, deep black and steaming with cold, slashed across a rock the size of a house. It wasn't from a wolf or a bear. That night, a hunter from the deep ash pack went missing. His body was never found, only his shattered spear, frozen in the middle of a perfectly circular pool of ice. Talia called an emergency gathering. Sara didn't wait to be invited. We're not dealing with pack politics anymore, she said. This is something else. Jake paced, silent. Then he spoke. It's the Frostfather. No one breathed. That's a myth, Talia said, but her voice wavered. He was real, Jake said. My father told me stories when I was a boy, before he died. The first spirit born of snow and vengeance. They say the first alpha cursed herself to keep him asleep. Sara felt the blood drain from her face. And now that she's at peace, he's waking up. Chapter 24, The Blood Price. The scrolls hidden in Edith Kendrick's satchel confirmed it. The Frostfather was once a guardian, an elemental wolf spirit tasked with balancing the seasons. But when humans began to hunt the shifters, he retaliated, destroyed villages, froze entire regions. The shifters bound him beneath the oldest glacier using blood magic, and the first alpha volunteered to anchor the spell. Every Kendrick generation since had been tasked with guarding the lock. Sara was the last, and she had unknowingly broken it. I ended the curse to save you, she told Jake, but I might have doomed everything else. He took her hands in his. We'll fix it. We'll face it. Together. But Elaine warned them. To seal the Frostfather again would require a blood price, not from Sara, from the one who broke the bloodline bond. Jake. Chapter 25. The Trial of Ice. They traveled to Hollow Peak, where the glacier had once sealed the Frostfather's spirit. What they found instead was a crater, empty, echoing, with black frost etched across every surface. They weren't alone. A creature of massive white fur and jagged antlers rose from the mist. Its eyes were voids. Its breath froze the trees. The Frostfather spoke no words, but his rage was felt like thunder. Jake stepped forward and dropped to one knee. I am the one who undid the binding. I offer my blood in penance. But Sara stepped beside him. Number not again. The Frostfather raised a claw. Energy coiled in the air. Ice, time, memory. Suddenly, a third voice echoed. Enough, Talia. Behind her stood Brannick, Elaine, dozens of Pact members, Deep Ash, Fenfall, even rogues. We all share this blame, Talia declared. Let the binding be remade not by one, but by all. They linked hands. A circle formed. Sara, human, took Jake's hand. Elaine whispered the words. And the frost receded. Not defeated. Not destroyed, but contained. For now. Chapter 26. The Alpha Reborn. The council held its largest meeting yet the following moon. This time, Jake stood in the center, not as exile, not as threat, but as one who had walked through fire and frost and come out changed. I have no right to lead you, he said, but I do have the will to fight for you, to build something new. Talia stepped beside him. We don't need a king. We need a circle. We need each other. The vote was unanimous. A new order began. One where leadership was earned, not inherited. Where bloodlines mattered less than actions. And the name Kendrick was written into Pact law, not as outsider, but as guardian. Chapter 27. A new winter. The frost never fully left the woods, but it no longer consumed them. Sara continued her ranger patrols, now joined often by young shifters who wanted to learn from her. The Kendrick cabin became a place of healing and strategy. Jake trained new warriors, Talia taught diplomacy, Brannick taught survival. Elaine watched it all from her rocking chair, finally content. And one evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Jake pulled Sara into his arms on the porch. No more curses, he murmured. No more secrets, she said. Just the wind, the woods, and the warmth between them. But deep in the forgotten ice, a single crack echoed. A warning. The last winter might not be over after all. Chapter 28. What lies beneath Sara pressed her palm against the frost-covered stone at the lake's edge. The symbol carved into it, part rune, part warning, had begun to glow again. Not the bright, searing white of danger, but a soft blue pulse, like a heartbeat. Jake stood behind her, silent, waiting. The wind tugged at his coat, tousled his hair, and carried the faintest scent of pine and wolf musk. Familiar, grounding. This isn't over, she whispered. No, he said. But we're stronger now. The truth was, they were both exhausted. After months of survival, battles, betrayals, and unexpected alliances, they had one piece, but it was fragile. Not just for them, but for the entire region. Pacts once scattered were attempting to realign. Rivalries had cooled, but not disappeared. And in the deepest veins of the forest, something ancient still pulsed. Sara closed her eyes. She wasn't just a park ranger anymore. She was a warden, and that meant watching everything. Chapter 29. Scars and Siblings. Talia adjusted her cloak and watched the training circle from a boulder, arms crossed. Brannick was working with two adolescent wolves, newly shifted, still clumsy, still grinning too much when they landed a hit. You're getting soft, she teased, when Brannick limped over for a water break. He smirked. I let them win. Right, she said, arching an eyebrow. despite everything, they were becoming friends. Not quite allies, not yet. But something closer to trust had taken root between them. Talia wasn't blind. Brannick had risked the entire pack, yes, but he had also nearly died trying to make it right. "Still think I should have been executed?" he asked casually. Talia's answer was equally light. Every other day, they both laughed, but deep down she knew they were on the edge of a fragile new era, and she'd have to protect it with more than teeth. Chapter 30. The Cave of Names. Sara followed Elaine into a place she'd never been allowed before, the Cave of Names. Hidden behind a waterfall that only flowed in moonlight, it housed the oldest records of the shifter lineages, etched into stone, preserved in wax, sealed with blood. "You've earned the right to see this," Elaine said, "but understand what it means. If you read your grandmother's entry, you must also leave your own." Sara hesitated. The path behind her was filled with snow, shadow, and ash. Ahead was legacy, responsibility. "I'll do it," she said. They lit a torch and moved deeper, and there it was, Edith Kendrick, Warden, year 1931. A full carving, next to it an unfinished mark. Sara placed her palm against the stone. The wall pulsed, the air warmed. Her name etched itself with a hiss of steam. Not just Sara Kendrick. Sara Kendrick, Ice Warden. Chapter 31. The Dead Season. One morning, every bird vanished. No song, no wings, no feathers. Scout, her loyal dog, barked frantically at the trees and refused to go past the perimeter. Something was wrong. Jake went out scouting and returned with a furrowed brow. "It's not just here," he said. "It's across all northern territories. Shifters are reporting strange freezes, quick, sharp, and targeted, like something is testing us." Sara didn't hesitate. "The Frost Father is stirring again." Talia called for another gathering, this time with urgency. The packs were rattled. Fenfall had lost 2 members, frozen solid from the inside. No sign of attack, no warning. Sara stood before them and said the words no one else would. The curse was never lifted, only passed on. And now something worse is trying to break through. Silence fell. Elaine finally spoke. "Then we must prepare for the dead season." Jake stiffened. "That's just a myth." "Wasn't the first alpha a myth too?" she asked. No one answered. Chapter 32. The Gathering Moon. The packs trained. Harder, longer, smarter. Sara and Jake worked side by side. She taught traps, terrain, rifle skills. He taught shift tactics, silent signaling, emotional control. Talia handled the political diplomacy, an exhausting, often thankless task. One night, after sparring, Jake pulled her aside. "You're different now." She tilted her head. "You mean more dangerous?" He smiled. "Number more, you. Like you finally stepped into something you didn't know you were missing." Sara's fingers brushed his jaw. "You ever regret I pulled you from the snow?" "Only when you punched too hard." Their laughter was brief. The night was long, and somewhere beyond the trees, something watched. Chapter 33. Dreams of the White Wolf. The dreams returned, but they weren't like before. Now Sara saw herself as the first alpha, bound in chains of frost, forced to choose between love and leadership. Each night the same question whispered through her skull. Would you give up your mate to save the world? And each morning she woke unsure. She hadn't told Jake, not yet. He was building something permanent, a home beyond the cabin, a hall for gathering, training, healing. Sara stood in the frame of the unfinished doorway and wondered, What would she do if the Frostfather demanded Jake's life to stop the rising cold again? And worse, what if Jake volunteered? Chapter 34. The Hollowed Return. They thought the Hollowed were gone, but like frostbite, they returned slowly, silently. A scout never returned from the western border. Then 2, then 5. The bodies were never found. Only bone masks. Elaine confirmed the worst. The Hollowed had sworn allegiance to a new entity. Not just the Frostfather, something older. The Deep One, she whispered. The god beneath the mountain. And it was calling to Sara. Chapter 35. Sacrifice. Elaine gathered Sara, Jake, and Talia. She laid out ancient texts, scrolls preserved in oil and wolfskin. There's only one way to seal the breach, she said. A warden must enter the rift, alone, and close it from the other side. Jake's hand went cold in Sara's. No, he said. It has to be me, Sara whispered. I opened it. I carry the name. I carry the bloodline. He shook his head. You are everything holding this place together. She kissed him. Then trust I know what I'm doing. Talia's eyes burned with unshed tears. And if you don't come back, Sara's voice didn't shake, then build something worth guarding. Chapter 36. The Descent. They led her to the rift, a canyon veiled in black ice, pulsing with cold magic. Elaine whispered the spell. Sara stepped into the dark. It was not a place. It was a memory. She saw every warden who came before her, dying, bleeding, choosing. She saw her grandmother, Edith, on one knee, holding the rift shut with nothing but iron will. And then him, the Deep One. It wasn't a wolf or a god. It was grief, made flesh, made hunger, and it reached for her. You are the last light, it whispered. Extinguish, and all is mine. Sara clenched her fist. Her grandmother's dagger was in her hand. She drove it into her palm. Blood met frost. The rift screamed. Chapter 37. Return. They found her collapsed at the edge of the rift. Jake carried her back. Her skin was cold, her pulse faint, but her eyes opened. I saw it, she said, and I shut it. He wept into her shoulder. Elaine smiled. Then winter sleeps again. Chapter 38. Home, the cabin was rebuilt again, this time into something bigger. They called it Frost Hollow Hall. A place for both wolves and humans, for training and peace, for stories. Sara stood before a class of children, some human, some shifter, teaching them about the history not found in books. Jake watched from the doorway, arms folded, heart full. They had not escaped the war. They had lived it. And together they'd made something new. Chapter 39. The final howl years passed. Legends twisted. But one story remained. The ranger who saved a dying man in the snow. The wolf who returned from exile. And the woman who faced winter and won. On the longest night of the year, they stood together once more at the lake. Jake kissed her temple. Sara smiled. And from deep within the woods, a howl rose, not of warning, not of sorrow, but of beginning. Chapter 40. The Frost Mark. A thin mist blanketed Frost Hollow Hall as Sara walked the perimeter alone, her boots crunching through late spring frost that shouldn't have been there. The air had changed, not with threat, but with warning. Something dormant was stirring again. At the base of the northern tree line, she found it, a circular burn pattern in the grass. No fire had touched it. Instead, the frost itself had etched it, precise, ancient, alive. A sigil she'd seen once before in the Cave of Names, the frost mark. By the time she returned to the hall, Jake was already awake, pulling on a sweater, eyes alert. You felt it too? He asked. I saw the mark, Sara said. North Woods. Jake's face darkened. That's close to the old Fenfall border. It shouldn't be active. It shouldn't, she agreed, but it is. Talia arrived by dusk, summoned without needing words. When Sara showed her the mark, Talia inhaled sharply. That's not just a warning, she said. It's an invitation. Sara's skin prickled. To what? To wake the oldest pact we've ever broken. Chapter 41. The Pact Reborn. Long before the Hollowed, before the first Alpha, before even the founding of Deep Ash or Silvertooth, there had been the Pact of Ice and Flame, a truce between elemental spirits and shapeshifters that held the world in delicate balance. The Frostmark was not just a signature, it was a summon. Sara stood with Jake and Talia near the Sigil at dusk. Elaine had arrived on the back of a sled drawn by 2 white wolves. She stepped out stiffly, pain shadowing her movements more than usual. I was hoping I'd never see that mark again, she muttered, using her cane to trace its edge. The last time it burned through this forest, 3 packs were lost. Why now? Jake asked. Because the Frostfather has been pacified, Elaine said. And the world always needs balance. Ice without flame cannot survive. They stood in silence as her words sank in. Then what do we do? Sara asked. Elaine turned to her, eyes cloudy but unwavering. You find the Fireborn, and you renew the Pact. Chapter 42. Ashes in the Wind. Finding the Fireborn was not simple. Legend spoke of them retreating centuries ago to volcanic valleys deep beyond the northern range. Few had seen them since. Some believed they were extinct. But Sara had dreams. Again. This time, it wasn't the first Alpha she saw. It was a woman cloaked in flame, eyes like burning coals. Speaking in a forgotten tongue, Sara somehow understood. Come. The price has not been paid. They left at dawn. Jake, Sara, Talia, and Brannock. Elaine stayed behind, saying only, If I'm needed, you'll know. The journey took them beyond the known shifter territories, past frozen rivers and scorched plains. The deeper they went, the warmer the earth beneath their boots became. And on the 4th night, the stars turned red. Chapter 43. Ember Keep. They reached the caldera by the end of the week, a jagged mouth of earth, steaming and alive. No snow touched it. The trees were black-barked and red-leaved, and the air shimmered like heat off asphalt. Jake shifted into wolf form to scout, but returned quickly. They're here, he said, watching. Sara stepped forward. Then let them watch. We came to make peace, not war. From the steam, they emerged, tall figures with ember-lit eyes and ash-blonde hair. Not wolves, not human, something between. The leader stepped forward. You are Ice Warden. Sara bowed slightly. Yes, and you are Fireborn. We remember the Pact. So do we. But do you remember the betrayal? Sara froze. Number tell me. And the Fireborn told her what the records had erased. The first Alpha had not simply bound the Frostfather. She had done so after killing the Fireborn emissary sent to help her. In her rage, in her pain, she had rejected the Pact and tried to contain the world alone. We suffered, the Fireborn leader said. Banished, forgotten, but not broken. Jake stepped forward. We came to make it right. The leader looked at Sara. Then choose. One of you must carry flame, and one must carry frost, if the balance is to be restored. Sara didn't hesitate. I'll take the flame. Jake's breath caught. Are you sure? If I don't, the Ice Warden line dies with me, and the world ends with it. Chapter 44. The Burning Rite. The ritual began at sunset. The Fireborn built a circle of molten stone, each one placing a shard of glowing obsidian into the earth. Sara stepped into the ring barefoot, her heart steady. The Fireborn chanted in low, crackling tones. Sparks danced around her. Heat blistered the air. Pain struck like lightning. Visions filled her head. Volcanoes erupting, cities consumed in flame, wolves of burning fur howling into endless night. Then, forests regrowing, warmth thawing the most ancient ice, and a red sun rising over balanced earth. Sara screamed once, then it was over. Her hair shimmered with fire at the tips. Her veins glowed faintly in the dark. But she lived, and she was no longer only Ice Warden. Chapter 45, Homeward Winds. They returned changed. The Fireborn sent emissaries with them, 3 in total, each with glowing weapons and sharp tongues. Talia welcomed them with tension but not hostility. Frost Hollow Hall was now a haven for both elements, but not everyone approved. The Deep Ash Pack fractured. A breakaway faction, loyal to the old ways, rejected the alliance and disappeared into the southern wilds. Jake predicted they'd return, with fire or worse, but for now, the balance held. Sara spent her evenings in the clearing where the Frostmark had first returned, listening to the world breathe again. Jake sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You glow in the dark now," he teased. "So do you when I kiss you," she said. And in the trees, the wolves of both frost and flame began to howl in harmony. Chapter 46, The Forgotten Children. But the peace could not hold forever. A young wolf from the rogue territories arrived bleeding at their gates, bearing a message carved into his back. Return what was taken. Elaine confirmed what no one wanted to hear. The old ones, the descendants of wolves and witches cast out centuries ago, had awakened. Neither fire nor ice welcomed them, and they wanted revenge. Sara met with the council. Then we meet them, talk, before another war begins. But Elaine shook her head. They do not talk, she said. They consume. Chapter 47, Teeth in the Fog. The attack started small. A caravan of supplies vanished. A scout patrol failed to check in. Then 2 bodies were found, entirely drained of blood, their eyes frozen open. Jake studied the wounds. "This isn't hollowed." Talia's voice was grim. "It's worse." Sara donned her cloak and flame-forged blade. "Then we hunt." They tracked the scent into the gray hollow marsh, where sound went to die. And there, in the fog, they saw them. Wolves with 6 eyes, creatures that walked upright but moved like smoke, and at their center, a woman of black ash and snow-white skin. She smiled at Sara. "You carry both curses," she said, "frost and flame. You are the door and the key." Then she vanished. Chapter 48, The Prophecy Rewritten. Elaine brought out one final scroll, one she'd sworn never to open. It spoke of the Omega Queen, a child of 2 elements, one who could undo all creation or restore it. Jake stared at Sara. "This is about you." Sara shook her head. "It's about who I become." Talia placed a hand on her shoulder. "Whatever happens, we stand with you." And so began the final winter, not of death, but of choice. Chapter 49, The Blood Moon Oath. The blood moon rose like a wound in the sky, casting a crimson glow over the trees. Every wolf felt it. Every branch trembled with the weight of prophecy. Sara stood at the highest cliff above Frost Hollow, flame in her veins, frost in her breath. Behind her, the pacts had gathered, Fireborn, Silvertooth, even the splintered remnants of Deep Ash. The ancient enemy was no longer myth. They had taken form, stolen blood, and marked her as the catalyst. Jake approached quietly, his silhouette half shadow, half hope. They're calling this the Blood Moon Oath, he said. Sara nodded. Because everything we are, all we've become, will be tested tonight. He offered her a simple iron blade, passed down from Elaine. Not enchanted, not glowing, just steel sharpened by 1,000 years of survival. No crown, no throne, he murmured. Just us. Sara took the blade. Just us. And then the wind shifted. The marsh fog rolled in, and the forgotten came. Chapter 50. The Unmaking. They came like shadows with teeth, wolf-shaped, human-eyed, silent until they struck. The first scream came from the left flank. Then the fire erupted, then the frost. The clearing became a battlefield carved in 2 elements. Fireborn ignited the air in streaks of orange and gold, while frost hollow wolves fought like echoes of the old world, silent and deadly. Sara moved through them like a blade. Her body burned, shimmered, froze, and cracked. She no longer needed to shift. She was both forces now. She took down the first forgotten beast with fire in her palm and a scream in her throat. Jake shifted midair, landing on one of the larger creatures, ripping into its neck with a fury she hadn't seen since that first night she found him half dead in the snow. Blood soaked the ground, but it was not just wolf blood. The white-skinned woman stepped through the smoke, taller than she had been, eyes like pits. You cannot hold balance, she hissed. You are a lie. You are a blight. I'm the answer, Sara said, raising her sword. And they clashed. Chapter 51. Between fire and frost steel hit claw. Magic flared. The 2 forces collided with a sound like splitting mountains. Sara's body pulsed with both elements, and each strike the enemy queen delivered tested the limits of her strength. She is the gate, the queen whispered. I must unmake you. Jake fought to get to her, but he was outnumbered. Talias stood back to back with him, eyes glowing with silver rage. You get to her, she growled. I'll hold them. Jake didn't argue. He tore through the battlefield, claw and tooth clearing his path. Sara stumbled once, just once, and the queen seized her by the throat. You were never meant to carry both, she spat. It will destroy you. Sara's hands burned against the queen's wrists. Then let it. She released the fire and the frost. A scream ripped through the trees as the energy engulfed both women in a blinding storm. Chapter 52. Silence. When the light faded, both women were gone, not dead, not destroyed, just gone. The battlefield was silent. The forgotten retreated like mist. The wolves stood blinking, panting, bloodied. Jake stood at the edge of the scorched earth, his face blank. Sara. He fell to his knees. Talia dropped beside him. She did it. He didn't move. She's not gone, Talia said. She can't be. But even she didn't know if she believed it. Elaine stood on the cliff above them, wind tugging her robes. She's where the world cannot follow, the seer whispered, but she is not lost. Chapter 53. The Hollow Year seasons passed. Frost Hollow rebuilt. Fireborn and Wolf lived side by side, united in vigilance and memory. Jake walked through the woods often, never far from where she vanished. The flame in the hall never went out. Talia governed with fairness, but her eyes always turned toward the north, where the trees whispered. They called that year the Hollow Year, a year without Sara, a year of waiting, a year of believing. And then one day, Scout, old and nearly blind, barked madly at the edge of the lake. Jake ran. So did Talia. So did the pack. And there, in the middle of the lake that had once held the first alpha, stood a figure of fire and frost. Her coat was torn, her eyes were tired. But she was back. Jake didn't speak. He didn't have to. He ran to her, fell to his knees, and Sara smiled. Did you miss me? Chapter 54. The new order with Sara's return, the final walls fell. No more exiles, no more secret bloodlines, no more ancient hatred buried beneath trees and rituals. She called for a council of all bloods, human, wolf, fireborn, hybrid, rogue. They gathered at Frost Hollow under the summer moon and wrote the first accord. No more alphas by lineage. No more wardens in isolation. No more secrets passed in whispers. Instead, shared knowledge, shared protection, shared power. Elaine passed in her sleep 2 moons later. In her will, she left a ring, silver-frosted, fire-banded for Sara, and a single line. You were the prophecy we needed. Sara cried for hours. Then she wore the ring. Chapter 55. After winter, they didn't marry, not in the traditional sense. There was no temple, no high priest, no binding vow under law. But one morning, under a red sun rising behind the frost-tipped trees, Jake handed her a carved wooden band, smoothed by hand, simple, wild. For every winter we survived, he said. And every one will face, she replied. They kissed with bare hands and open scars, and no need to pretend. The forest around them exhaled, and from the trees came howls, not mourning, not rage. Celebration, because the alpha had not died. She had changed, and with her, the world did too. Chapter 56. The Wildfire Path. With balance restored and the world no longer divided between ancient forces, Sara found herself once again restless. She had survived war, betrayal, love, and the collision of legacies older than blood. Now the land demanded not peace, but stewardship. She stood beside Jake, overlooking a gorge thick with new growth. The trees had reclaimed the battlefield. What had once been scarred earth was now blooming with frost-resistant ivy and warm-rooted flame grass, strange hybrid plants that shouldn't exist, and yet thrived. Nature's rewriting herself, Sara murmured. She learned it from you, Jake said. That evening, as the Fireborn built the first wildfire shrine, dedicated not to flame alone but to change, Talias presented Sara with a staff carved from fused emberwood and frostroot. It pulsed with both cold and heat. You're not just a warden anymore, Talias said. You're a Pathfinder. Sara blinked. What's that? Someone who burns the trail for the next to walk. And so a new title was born, Ice Warden no longer, Pathfinder, Sara of the Hollow Flame. Chapter 57. Seeds of the Forgotten. But the past does not die. Word came from the eastern marshes. The Forgotten had left behind more than broken bodies. Small enclaves of cursed blood remained, children born of both shadow and wolf, raised without pack, without law, without language. One was captured trying to steal from a deep ash camp. Thin, wide-eyed, silent, covered in marks no one recognized. Sara knelt before him. What's your name? He bared his teeth, didn't speak. She held out a piece of dried fruit. You're not my enemy? He snatched it. Still silent. Talias frowned. We should be careful. Jake looked at Sara. Or we should teach him he's not alone. So they didn't lock him up. They fed him, watched him. Let him run the forest, but always with a watcher close behind. Weeks later, he returned, alone, holding a broken bone mask in his hand. He dropped it at Sara's feet. Don't need it, he muttered, and for the first time, she saw hope in the eyes of the Forgotten. Chapter 58. Firewalkers. Sara and Jake weren't alone in forging a new path. Others began to rise, new leaders not born of strength, but of resilience. young shifters who learned from both wolf and flame, scouts who spoke human languages and tree tongue, healers who could use ice to numb wounds and fire to seal them. They called themselves firewalkers, a new generation, a new kind of pack. One afternoon, a firewalker named Nell brought Sara a journal found buried near the southern cliffs. Its pages were brittle, but the handwriting was clear. Property of Edith Kendrick. Sara's breath caught. Her grandmother had been here, further than she'd ever known. The final entry chilled her. There is something buried under the third sunstone. I couldn't open it. Maybe my granddaughter will. She and Jake left at once. Chapter 59. Under the Stone. The sunstone was real, an obelisk cracked by time, hidden beneath overgrown vines and guarded by fireflies that glowed blue at night. Beneath it was a trapdoor sealed with both rune and blood wax. Sara touched the door and it melted. Jake pulled it open. They descended slowly, the air below dense and old. At the bottom, a room of ice and ash. Shelves of books, drawings, weapon prototypes, and one mirror etched with a single phrase. In her reflection, all balance begins. Sara approached it. Her face shimmered with both elements, eyes rimmed in silver and amber, hair kissed with flame. In the mirror, her reflection did not move. It spoke. You are the last piece, and the first. Then it vanished, and behind the glass, a door opened. Chapter 60. The Whisper Gate. Beyond the mirror lay the Whisper Gate, an arch of carved obsidian ringed with bones that sang when touched. Jake placed his hand on it. This isn't for me. Sara stepped forward. The bones quieted. She heard them whisper. Names, warnings, her lineage, Kendrick, Elaine, Edith, first Alpha, and then her own name, etched as if it had always been here. The gate flared open. Behind it, a realm of snow and stars, a place untouched by time. She didn't step through, not yet, but she reached in and pulled out a small object, a single fire-frosted feather. When she held it in her hand, every animal in the forest stilled. The world knew her, and the gate sealed behind her. Chapter 61. Legacy in Motion. Years passed. Not quickly, but steadily, Frost Hollow became legend. Not a place, but a symbol. Of what could happen when a woman chose compassion over conquest. When an exile chose redemption. When a seer passed her torch to someone unexpected. Sara aged, but slowly. The magic in her bones tempered her, kept her strong. Jake aged with her, silver in his hair, fire still in his spirit. They trained dozens of firewalkers, raised a generation of orphans and exiles, and children of ice and flame. Scout died peacefully one winter morning, head on Sara's foot, one last wag. She buried him near the trail where she'd found Jake. Full circle, the world turned, the forest healed, and somewhere beyond flame and frost, the first Alpha slept, no longer cursed, but at peace. Chapter 62. Last winter. In her final years, Sara returned often to the lake. Jake sat beside her, their hands never quite cold. Do you regret anything? He asked once. She thought about the blood, the betrayals, the ones they lost. No, she said, because even our pain built this. Jake smiled. You're still stubborn. Good, she said. You'll need that when I'm gone. He shook his head. You're not going anywhere. But she knew better. That night, she dreamed of snow and woke to stillness. She kissed his hand, stepped outside, and vanished into the trees. They never found her body. Only a single feather, half fire, half ice, resting on the windowsill. Chapter 63. The Children of Hollow Flame. 2 years after Sara disappeared into the trees, the Firewalkers had grown into a force of their own. No longer a loose alliance of orphans and rebels, but a true order. Scouts patrolled the borders. Healers crafted tinctures from firegrass and glacial root. Hunters walked with wolves, and witches whispered to the bones of the forest. But none of them had forgotten her. At the base of Frost Hollow, a new group of initiates gathered, each marked with ash along their arms and a rune etched in cooling wax. The hollow flame sigil, Sara's legacy. Jake watched from a distance. His hair was fully silver now, beard peppered with ice. He rarely spoke during ceremonies, but tonight he stood before children. "You are here because you survived something," he told them. "Loss, isolation, a world that told you weren't meant to lead." He lifted his palm, revealing the old scar Sara had once sealed during battle. She believed in you anyway. Among the children, one stood taller than the rest. Not older, just brighter. Eyes flickering blue and gold. A girl who had once been abandoned by both wolves and humans alike. Her name was Elia, and she was about to change everything. Chapter 64, Elia's Trial. Elia was unlike the others. She didn't flinch during training. She didn't question orders, but she didn't blindly obey them either. Her fire came not from rage, but resolve. One day, during a routine forest sweep, she vanished. Her patrol found no blood, no signs of struggle, just a trail of frost-burned grass and a line of tiny ash prints leading deeper into the valley. Jake knew immediately. She went where Sara went, Talia warned him. "If she enters the Wraith Trail, we may not be able to follow." "I'm not going after her," he said. "I'm preparing for when she comes back." Because he remembered that look, the one Sara wore before she walked into frost and flame. The look of someone about to carry something bigger than themselves. Chapter 65. The Wraith Trail. Elia wasn't running. She was listening. The whispers began weeks ago, words in a voice not her own, echoing at the edge of sleep, a name repeated like a forgotten song. Iskra. She followed it through the ashlands, through groves of scorched elder trees, through caves filled with frost ghosts. Her power responded to the land, not burning it, not freezing it, but balancing it. And when she reached the heart of the Wraith Trail, she found her, Sara, or something that had once been her. Glowing, ageless, not spirit, not human, something more. Sara turned slowly. "I was waiting for you." Elia fell to her knees. "You're alive." Sara knelt beside her. "Not as you remember. I crossed the mirror. I became the tether. The world holds because I do." Elia touched her hand. "Then let me hold it with you." Sara's smile was soft. "You're ready." And she pressed a single mark onto Elia's chest. The hollow flame sigil lit up, and then split in two. Chapter 66. The Shatter Mark. Elia awoke at the edge of Frost Hollow, with the mark still burning under her skin. But now it wasn't just a brand. It was a map to something no one had seen since the first breaking of the world. The Shatter Mark. Talia and Jake studied her like a riddle. "You crossed the Wraith Trail?" She nodded. "And I came back with a message. The world is about to break again." Jake clenched his jaw. "We've had peace for decades." "Balance isn't peace," Elia said. "It's pressure, and pressure breaks." They held a secret council that night. Elders, firewalkers, rogues. Even Brannick, now a half-retired scout living in the frost caves, came with his old blade. Jake placed a map on the table. "Where is it?" Elia pointed to a place no one had dared tread since the wars, the scarred hollow, where all things go to die. Chapter 67. Into the Scarred Hollow. The Scarred Hollow was a wound in the world, geologically unstable, magically corrupted, spiritually dead. But Sara's reflection had shown it once, and now Elia's map burned when she approached it. They went in small numbers, Elia, Jake, Brannock, 2 firewalkers sworn to silence, no torches, no open flames, only breath and memory. The deeper they went, the colder it became. Not frost, not ice, just absence, until they reached it. A dome of cracked obsidian and glass, pulsing with red light. Inside, a child waited, pale, glowing, crying ash, not human, not shifter, not forgotten, something new. It looked at Elia and said, "You're my sister." Chapter 68. The Born Flame. The child's name was Kai. He had no memories, no mother, no tribe. Only a whisper in his head that said, "Find her." The one who bears the split flame. Jake kept his distance. "He's a weapon," he warned. "He's a child," Elia countered. Brannock studied the boy. But of what origin? Kai didn't know, but he knew fear and loneliness and the cold ache of being created, not born. Sara's voice returned to Elia in sleep. "Protect him. He will be what I could never be, balance in living form." And when Kai cried, frost formed on one cheek and fire on the other. They took him in, not because it was safe, but because it was right. Chapter 69. The night without fire. The warning came 3 days later. All fire across the northern border extinguished, even sacred flames, even dragon blood torches. Only one spark remained, the one inside Kai, and something was hunting him. They saw it only once, on the ridge outside Frost Hollow, a being made of smoke and grief wrapped in fireless frost. No name, no howl, only silence. Jake stood at the gate. "If we fight it, we lose. If we run, we die tired." Elia placed her hand on Kai's shoulder. "Then we stand." And in that moment, Kai did not flinch. He stepped forward, and the mark on his chest opened like a blossom, revealing a core neither fire nor frost could claim. Only light. The enemy vanished, not defeated. Dissolved. Chapter 70. Lightkeeper Kai didn't sleep that night. Neither did Elia. He sat in the snow, watching the stars, whispering to himself in an unknown tongue. Elia joined him. "What are you?" she asked. He looked up. "I think I'm what comes after war." She didn't speak, because deep in her bones, she knew he was right. And far beyond the hollow, in lands not yet mapped, others felt it too. The shiver, the shift, the last ripple of Sara Kendrick's legacy, the end of an age, and the birth of something new. Thank you for listening to this audiobook. Please consider subscribing